The Razer DeathAdder has to be one of the most iconic gaming mice. I mean, it was the first one that I picked up when I really got into PC gaming. Over 15 million mice carrying that name have been sold. And now the latest iteration is this, the Razer DeathAdder V3 Pro. With a refined shape, Razer's latest sensor and switch technology, and an incredibly lightweight 63-gram design, there's a lot to talk about with the $150 DeathAdder V3 Pro. So let's dive in and check it out. Evolving from the DeathAdder V2 Pro that we checked out a couple years ago, this new V3 Pro has been slightly redesigned, but is still aimed at FPS players who are kind of looking for that claw or palm style grip. At its core, the DeathAdder V3 Pro is a right-handed ergonomic mouse. It features 5 programmable buttons, including 2 side buttons. There's a small LED status light in front of the scroll wheel that indicates DPI settings when the combo power/DPI button that is on the bottom is pressed, and it also flashes when the mouse is powered on or off. And on the front, the V3 Pro has also been upgraded with a USB-C port. The DeathAdder V3 Pro will be available in both black and white colorways, like the one we have here, with matching accessories. Included in the box of this white version we received are a white wireless USB dongle and a USB dongle adapter, and a set of black Razer grip tape. And with that grip tape, you'll notice that on the older V2 Pro, Razer had a little bit of a textured finish here down on the left and right side to give a little bit more grip. But they've gotten rid of that with the V3 Pro, and it's just the same material that is across the entire shell. Personally, I've never had a problem with grip on this material, but they do include that grip tape if you do need a little bit more. On the bottom, the refined shape means that the PTFE feet are slightly smaller than the older V2 Pro to fit this new design. But otherwise, the overall design of the feet is very similar between the DeathAdder V3 Pro and the Viper V2 Pro that we checked out recently. And real quick, here are the dimensions of the DeathAdder V3 Pro. Width is 68 millimeters, height is 44 millimeters, length is 127 millimeters. So recently, if you've been paying attention to mice, Razer also came out with the Viper V2 Pro. And this ambidextrous design, meaning that, it's symmetrical left to right, except for these side buttons, this is usually preferred for like fingertip and claw style grip gamers. But with the DeathAdder V3 Pro, this is catered more towards claw and even palm style grip, so a different kind of gripping on the mouse. And so now with the Viper V2 Pro and the DeathAdder V3 Pro, Razer now has Pro mice for all different styles of grips and different hand sizes as well. Now there have been a lot of people who've been asking for a Viper V2 Mini wireless, so we definitely gotta keep our eye out for that from Razer. And moving on, let's talk about the overall shape and design and how that works with different grip styles. So the most notable changes to the overall shape compared to the older V2 Pro include reduced flares on both sides of mouse 1 and mouse 2 buttons. The side buttons have been raised a little bit, so those are a little bit higher, and it has a higher overall hump in the middle, so that gives better palm support for both claw grips and then also palm grips. So overall, that makes it a very comfortable mouse that suits my grip well. When I game, I'm usually using a claw kind of style grip, maybe a relaxed claw, where my fingertips aren't, really high up on mouse 1 and mouse 2, but the palm of my hand is making a little bit of contact with the back of the mouse. My right hand is about 7 inches long and 4¼ inches wide, which puts me right in the medium category according to Razer's Mouse Fit Finder. I also use a 1-3-1 grip with my middle finger kind of hovering over the middle mouse wheel here. And for me, the DeathAdder V3 Pro is a very comfortable mouse for my grip style. When not gaming, it's easy to rest my palm on the back of the mouse. And then when I am gaming, I hold the mouse a bit further away from my palm, but still make some contact. And I can do this with ambidextrous shaped mice like the Viper V2 Pro, but it's easier and more comfortable for me with the DeathAdder V3 Pro. And so for the most competitive of players with a claw or fingertip style grip, the Viper V2 Pro, which sheds a few more grams and has an ambidextrous shape, might be the better fit. But for me, who both works at my computer all day and then games when I can, the ergonomic shapes of the DeathAdder V3 Pro ends up being a more comfortable fit for me in the long run. And so the other major design change here with the DeathAdder V3 Pro is that the weight has been dropped by 25 grams over the older V2 Pro. And that brings it down to 63 grams, which is not quite as light as the Viper V2 Pro, which comes in at 58 grams, but this is much lighter than the older version and makes it very easy to move around when gaming. And that also puts it at just 1 more gram than the wired DeathAdder Mini, which is pretty incredible. Now, there were some sacrifices made to get down to that lightweight, just like the Viper V2 Pro. Almost identical to the changes from the Viper Ultimate going to the Viper V2 Pro, the DeathAdder V3 Pro sheds its RGB lighting and the ability to use the charging dock in the name of saving weight. It also moves to just 5 programmable buttons, down from the V2 Pro's 8 buttons. And for me, as an FPS gamer, I'm totally fine with that. I'm willing to make those sacrifices for a lighter mouse that moves easier. But as with the Viper Ultimate and the Viper V2 Pro, now is a great time to pick up the DeathAdder V2 Pro if those are some things that you want. I think right now it's priced at just $65 on Amazon, so a heck of a deal there. It still has the optical switches, it's got the hyperspeed wireless, a little bit of RGB, and the charging dock here. This one also has Bluetooth functionality, which the DeathAdder V3 Pro does not. So a great time to pick that up if you want kind of the older model. In addition to a tweaked shape and lightweight design, the DeathAdder V3 Pro also takes advantage of the latest sensor and switch hardware tech from Razer. And in third-party latency tests like those from YouTuber Optimum Tech, Razer mice, even the wireless variants, usually get close to the top of the charts. For the sensor, Razer is using the Focus Pro 30K optical that's also found in the Viper V2 Pro. Spec-wise, this takes max acceleration up to 70G, max speed up to 750 IPS, and it works on a wide variety of surfaces, including glass that is at least 2 millimeters thick. On the switch side of things, Razer is using its optical Gen 3 switches, which takes the life cycle up to 90 million clicks. And using a light signal rather than mechanical connection, optical switches eliminate the fear of double-clicking issues. And so this also means that there is not a need for a debounce delay like on some other gaming mice. And they also feel different. On the V3 Pro, the switches take a little more force to actuate than the older V2 Pro, but also feel a little bit sharper. So the V2 Pro switches are lighter, but maybe feel slightly mushy in comparison. The mouse 2 button on my DeathAdder V2 Pro also feels a little different than my mouse 1, and not in a good way. But on the V3 Pro, both switches feel similar, but overall the change makes the mouse buttons feel more precise. And one other thing to mention here is that the polling rate just out of the box with this mouse is topped out at 1000 Hertz, which is kind of industry standard, but there is a way to get up to 4000 Hertz, but it includes an optional accessory. The Hyperpolling wireless dongle is a $30 option that's only available on Razer.com, and this works also with the Viper V2 Pro. And this will take the polling rate up to 4000 Hertz. Originally, this was meant to be released with the Viper V2 Pro, and it works with both mice, and in theory, upping the polling rate could also help reduce input latency even further. And I'm really hoping to pick one of these up to test it out with both the DeathAdder V3 Pro and the Viper V2 Pro, but every time I check Razer's website, they are sold out. And also one other note is that you can get this in a bundle and save 15 bucks, I believe, on Razer's website. So you can get the mouse and that Hyperpolling dock for $165 instead of paying $180 total for them separately. Removing the RGB and implementing the new 30K sensor also takes the battery life up to a respectable 90 hours. And moving on to Synapse, the software side of things, the DPI can be changed between 5 different stages via the button on the bottom of the mouse, and those stages can be set from within Synapse. Additionally, the Focus Pro 30K sensor enables smart tracking for cutoff points with adjustable tracking distances as well as asymmetric cutoff. When enabled, this asymmetric cutoff allows for different settings for both liftoff and landing distances. Personally, I've just kept it on smart tracking and kept it right in the middle and haven't had any issues. Also inside of Synapse are controls for power settings like a low power mode and wireless power saving. And also the polling rate can be changed from 125 to 500 or the default 1000 Hertz. So really the only downside I can see with the DeathAdder V3 Pro is that price, $150. As we've seen with the Viper V2 Pro, some people are not happy that it costs more than the older version, but it sheds some of the features. But for what it is, for what the market is, and also the consideration that it's just more expensive to manufacture products right now, I'm not surprised. Going back to some more, I guess, budget wireless lightweight gaming mice like from Glorious. I think these come in at $80 for like the Model O wireless and the Model D wireless. While they both perform well and are good mice for what they are and how much they cost, going back and forth between like this $150 Razer DeathAdder V3 Pro and the Glorious mice, they just don't have the same feel. I've used the Glorious mice quite a bit and really enjoy them, but when swapping back over to the Razer, this just feels more sturdier in the hand, and it also feels snappier. And the only thing that slightly irks me with the pricing is that to take full advantage of what this mouse can do and get that 4,000 hertz polling rate, you do have to buy an optional accessory, so another $30 or $15 if you get that bundle with the mouse. So that's the only thing where I'm kind of bummed that Razer didn't just include that to take, full advantage of what this mouse can do right out of the box. And the fact that I can't actually purchase that Hyperpolling dongle from Razer.com right now makes it even worse because I really want to check that out. So when it comes down to it, does the DeathAdder V3 Pro make me a better gamer? Yes, I think it does, but I also think that sometimes it has a little bit to do with kind of like the placebo effect of like having a brand new mouse and the excitement around that. Now, granted, I've had this mouse for a couple weeks, and even last night when I was playing, it still feels really good and it's exciting, and I feel like I'm able to make really snappy movements, and I also feel like I'm just a little bit more accurate with this mouse. Now, take that with a grain of salt because I am in no way a pro gamer, but at the same time, I have been playing a lot of FPS games for a long time, and this mouse just feels absolutely great to use. While the $150 price tag for less features might cause some to turn away from the Razer DeathAdder V3 Pro, everything here is basically what I would want in a top-tier ergonomic gaming mouse. As much as I loved the Viper V2 Pro, the DeathAdder V3 Pro is a better fit for my hands and how I grip the mouse. It just feels right. Now, of course, I'd love to see it just a little bit lighter, down to the 58 grams of the Viper V2 Pro, but for me, the DeathAdder V3 Pro is just a solid choice for gaming, and it's going to be the mouse I'm going to be using the most going forward. All right, well, that's going to do it for our review of the DeathAdder V3 Pro from Razer. Let us know what you think about it down in the comments below. And if you're looking for some other videos to watch, I'll link to our review of the Viper V2 Pro over here, as well as our most recent video. And thank you for watching. If you enjoyed this video, please give it a thumbs up and consider subscribing. This is Jordan with 9to5 Toys.